Ghosts of Earth wake up. The first thing Dr. Elena Vasquez felt was cold. Not the gentle chill of morning air, but the bone-deep freeze that comes from a century of dreamless sleep. Her eyes opened to soft blue light filtering through crystalline walls, and for a moment she thought she was still dreaming. The stasis chamber hissed open with a sound like escaping breath. Elena tried to sit up, but her muscles felt like wet rope. Around her, other pods were opening too, releasing their ancient occupants into a world that had forgotten them completely. "Status report," she croaked, her voice barely a whisper after so many years of silence. A tall figure approached through the mist. The being wore an environmental suit, but Elena could see scales glinting beneath the transparent material. When it spoke, the words came through a translation device that turned alien sounds into perfect English. "Welcome back, Dr. Vasquez. I am Research Director Kethvar of the Zephyrian Xenoarchaeology Institute. You have been in stasis for approximately 100,000 standard years." Elena's mind reeled. 100,000 years. The number was too large to grasp, like trying to hold an ocean in her hands. She looked around at her awakening team members. Captain Marcus Chen was already on his feet, his soldiers' training helping him adapt faster. Engineer Zara Okafor was checking the equipment with shaking hands. Dr. James Rivera sat staring at nothing, probably calculating what 100,000 years meant for human civilization. "Where are we?" Elena asked, finally managing to stand. "Station Kepler 442b in what you once called the Kepler system. Your stasis pods were discovered buried beneath 3 kilometers of sediment. We have been searching for maker artifacts for decades, but finding actual makers alive." Kethvar paused. "This changes everything." "Makers?" Captain Chen's voice was sharp-witted. A suspicion. "What do you mean by makers?" Kethvar gestured to a wall display that shimmered to life. It showed star charts, technological schematics, and historical timelines. The makers were the legendary species that gave the galaxy its foundation: faster than light travel, terraforming technology, universal translation protocols, advanced medicine. All of it traces back to the makers, though most scholars believe they were mythical. Elena felt her legs give out. She sat heavily on the edge of her pod, staring at the display. The technology shown there was human technology. She recognized the warp drive specifications, the atmospheric processors, even the basic design of the translation device Kethvar was using. "You think we're mythical?" she whispered. "We're mythical," Kethvar corrected gently. "Your presence here proves the legends true. The makers were real, and now they have returned." Engineer Okafor had found her voice. "What happened to humanity? To Earth?" The alien scales shifted color, a sign Elena recognized as distress. "According to our records, the Maker homeworld was destroyed in an ancient war. The Makers vanished, leaving behind only their gifts to the galaxy. Many species have built their entire civilizations on Maker technology." Dr. Rivera finally spoke, his historian's mind working through the implications. "They're using our technology, but they don't know it came from us specifically. We've become a myth, a legend. Meanwhile, someone else is taking credit for our innovations." Elena stood up slowly, her strength returning with her anger. Who's claiming our work?" Kethvar hesitated. "The Dominion Council has governed the galaxy for 80,000 years. They claim to be the inheritors of Maker wisdom, the chosen stewards of their legacy. Every species pays tribute to them for access to Maker technology." Captain Chen's expression darkened. "They're profiting from our work while telling everyone we never existed." "Not exactly," Kethvar said carefully. "They acknowledge the Makers existed, but they claim the Makers chose them as successors before ascending to a higher plane of existence. The common people worship the Makers as gods who left the galaxy in the hands of the wise Dominion." Elena felt sick. Their entire species had been turned into a convenient myth, while others built empires on human sweat and ingenuity. But beneath the nausea, something harder was forming: determination. "We need information," she said quietly. "Everything about this Dominion Council, their technology, their claims. Can you help us? Kethvar's scales shifted again, this time to what Elena guessed was excitement. Help the makers? It would be the greatest honor of my life. But you must understand, if the Dominion learns that actual makers have returned, they will see you as a threat to their authority. Good, Captain Chen said grimly. Let them. Over the next several days, Kethvar shared everything he knew about the galaxy humanity had missed. The Zephyrians were one of dozens of species that had developed space travel using human technology, but they were considered a minor power. The real authority belonged to the Dominion Council, a group of 3 species that had formed an alliance shortly after humanity's disappearance. The Vorth were master engineers who had reverse-engineered human manufacturing techniques. The Kektari were brilliant scientists who had unlocked the secrets of human medical technology. The Nexari were cunning administrators who had created the galactic economy around human innovations. Together they ruled over hundreds of worlds and thousands of species. They've built their entire power structure on a lie, Dr. Rivera observed as they reviewed the historical data. If the galaxy learns that humans are still alive, still here, it undermines everything they've claimed. Elena nodded. That's why we can't just announce ourselves. We need proof of what they've done, evidence that will convince the entire galaxy. Engineer Okafor looked up from the technical specifications she'd been studying. I can prove the technology is ours. Every piece of hardware they're using has human design signatures, coding patterns that are unique to Earth engineering, but we'll need access to their core systems to demonstrate it. Captain Chen was studying tactical displays. The Dominion has fleets, armies, entire worlds under their control. We're 4 people with a research team of friendly aliens. How do we take on an empire? Elena smiled for the first time since waking up. The same way humanity always has. We're clever, we adapt, and we don't give up. Besides, we have one advantage they don't know about. Which is? We know how all their technology actually works. Every system they've built is based on human designs they don't fully understand. They're using our tools without our knowledge. That makes them predictable. Kethvar had been listening quietly, but now he spoke up. There may be another advantage. Not all species are happy under Dominion rule. Many pay tribute reluctantly, and some have tried to rebel. If you could prove the Dominion's claims are false, we could start a revolution, Elena finished, not through war, but through truth. They spent weeks preparing. Kethvar helped them understand galactic society, languages, and customs. The research team provided them with identification documents that would pass casual inspection. Most importantly, they learned about the Dominion's power structure and how to get close to it. The plan was elegantly simple. Elena and her team would pose as representatives of a newly discovered species, seeking to join galactic society. This would give them access to Dominion officials and their technology systems. Once inside, they could gather the evidence they needed and begin spreading the truth. Remember, Elena told her team as they prepared to leave the research station, we're not trying to conquer anyone. We're not trying to take over the galaxy. We're just trying to get humanity its rightful place in the community we helped create. Captain Chen checked his equipment one last time. And if they don't want to give it to us? Elena's smile was sharp as a blade. Then we remind them that humans didn't survive 100,000 years in stasis just to be erased from history. We came back for a reason. Their ship, a modified Zephyrian vessel, equipped with carefully hidden human technology, slipped into hyperspace toward the Dominion capital. Behind them, Kethvar and his team watched the stars swallow the ship that carried the last hope of justice for a species thought extinct. In the depths of space, 4 humans who had slept through the rise and fall of empires prepared to reclaim their legacy. The galaxy had forgotten who built its foundation, but Elena Vasquez and her team were about to provide a very memorable reminder. The makers had returned, and this time they weren't going anywhere. The makers strike back. The Dominion capital world of Nexus Prime was everything Elena had expected and nothing she had prepared for. Floating cities drifted through the upper atmosphere, connected by transport tubes that sparkled like silver threads. The architecture was beautiful, elegant, and utterly human in its underlying principles. "It's like someone took Earth's dreams and built them without permission," Dr. Rivera whispered, as their shuttle approached the diplomatic quarter. Elena nodded grimly. Every structure they passed showed human design influences. The energy grids, the transportation systems, even the way the cities were organized, all of it echoed patterns that had originated on Earth millennia ago. Their cover story held up perfectly at the customs checkpoint. The Zephyrian documentation identified them as the Terran Republic, survivors from a long-lost colony world seeking to rejoin galactic civilization. It was so close to the truth that Elena barely had to lie. The Dominion official who greeted them was a tall, graceful Nixari, with silver skin and eyes like liquid mercury. "Welcome to Nexus Prime. I am Administrator Velthara. The Council is eager to meet with your people and discuss your integration into our galactic community." "We're honored by the opportunity," Elena replied smoothly. "We've heard so much about the Dominion's wisdom and the gifts of the ancient Makers." Velthara's expression grew reverent. "The Makers blessed the galaxy with their knowledge before ascending to join the cosmic consciousness. The Dominion has been faithful guardians of their legacy for 80,000 years. Behind Elena, Captain Chen made a sound that might have been a cough or suppressed laughter. Engineer Okafor was studying the walls with fascination, probably recognizing the power conduit designs from Earth's colonial expansion period. "We would love to learn more about this legacy," Elena said. "Perhaps we could tour some of the Maker technology installations." "Of course. The Council believes that all species should understand the gifts they have inherited. Tomorrow we can arrange a visit to the primary data core, where many of the original Maker designs are preserved." That night, in their assigned quarters, Elena's team huddled together planning their next moves. The rooms were comfortable but clearly monitored. Another human innovation the Dominion had adopted. "The data core is our target," Engineer Okafor whispered. "If I can access those systems, I can download proof that every single Maker design is actually human engineering. The mathematical signatures alone will be enough to convince anyone with technical knowledge." Dr. Rivera nodded. "And I've been analyzing their historical records. There are inconsistencies everywhere. Dates that don't match, technological developments that appeared overnight, cultural references that make no sense unless you know human history." Captain Chen was more practical. "Security is tight but not impossible. They're not expecting infiltration from extinct humans. Their entire security model assumes everyone they're dealing with is technologically inferior." Elena felt that familiar spark of pride in her species. "That's our edge. They've been using our technology for so long, they think they understand it. But they've never had to innovate, never had to push beyond what we already gave them." The next morning, Administrator Velthara led them through the gleaming corridors of the primary data core. The facility was a testament to human engineering scaled up to cosmic proportions. Quantum processors hummed with patterns Elena recognized from Earth's early AI development. Data streams flowed through crystalline matrices that her team had helped design centuries ago. "Magnificent, isn't it?" Velthara said proudly. "The Maker's gift to the galaxy. Through this system we coordinate trade, communication, and governance across 10,000 worlds." Engineer Okafor stepped closer to one of the terminals. "May I? I'm fascinated by the underlying architecture." "Of course. Though I should warn you, Maker technology is quite complex. Even our best engineers don't fully understand all the principles involved." Okafor's fingers danced over the interface, and Elena saw her eyes widen. The engineer was seeing something that excited and horrified her in equal measure. "The quantum encryption protocols," Okafor said carefully. "They're quite sophisticated." "Yes, the Makers were far beyond us in computational theory. We've spent millennia trying to decode their mathematical frameworks." Elena moved closer and saw what had shocked Okafor. The encryption wasn't alien at all. It was a modified version of the security protocols Elena herself had helped develop for Earth's colonial data networks. The Dominion had been using human code for 80,000 years without understanding how it actually worked. "Administrator," Elena said slowly, "I'm curious about something. When exactly did the Dominion receive these gifts from the Makers?" Velthara's expression grew thoughtful. The transition occurred approximately 99,147 years ago, according to our most ancient records. The Makers completed their great work and ascended, leaving behind technological caches for their chosen inheritors to discover. Dr. Rivera stepped forward. "That's remarkably specific dating for such ancient events. Do you have records from before that time?" "Some fragments, yes. The pre-ascension period was chaotic. Wars, technological instability, the collapse of earlier civilizations. The Makers brought order from that chaos." Elena felt the pieces clicking together. "And these earlier civilizations, what happened to them?" "Most were destroyed in the conflicts that preceded the Maker's gift. Some simply vanished. There are archaeological sites throughout the galaxy showing signs of advanced species that disappeared overnight. Likely they were unable to handle the responsibility of Maker knowledge." Captain Chen's voice was carefully neutral. "What if they didn't disappear? What if they were the Makers themselves?" Velthara laughed, a sound like silver bells. "Impossible. The Makers were beings of wisdom and cosmic understanding. These other species were clearly primitive, warlike, destructive. The archaeological evidence shows they were everything the Makers were not." Elena exchanged glances with her team. The picture was becoming clearer and more infuriating with every word. Humanity hadn't vanished. They had been systematically erased from history, their achievements attributed to mythical beings, their very existence denied. "I'd like to see some of this archaeological evidence," Elena said. That afternoon, Velthara took them to the Museum of Galactic Heritage. The exhibits were a masterpiece of historical revision. Cases displayed human artifacts labeled as primitive pre-Maker technology. Ancient Earth symbols were described as crude attempts to copy Maker designs. Even human skeletal remains were presented as evolutionary dead ends that failed to achieve Maker enlightenment. Dr. Rivera was staring at a display case containing what was obviously a human military uniform. The placard read, "Warlike species that rejected Maker wisdom. Note the aggressive symbolism and crude manufacturing." "This is obscene," he whispered. Elena was looking at a holographic display showing the timeline of galactic civilization. According to the exhibit, the Makers had appeared as if by magic, gifted the galaxy with technology, and then vanished into cosmic transcendence. There was no mention of evolution, no acknowledgement of the long development process that had created human civilization. "Administrator," Elena said carefully, "what would happen if someone discovered that the Makers weren't mythical beings? That they were, say, an actual species with a real history and home planet?" Velthara looked puzzled. "That's impossible. The Council has investigated this thoroughly. There are no species in the galaxy capable of creating Maker-level technology. The mathematical proofs alone demonstrate that such innovations could only come from beings who had transcended normal evolutionary limitations." "But hypothetically," Elena pressed, "hypothetically, it would destabilize the entire foundation of galactic civilization. The Dominion's authority rests on our role as inheritors of Maker wisdom. If the Makers were just another species—" Velthara shuddered. "It would be chaos. Wars, revolutions, the collapse of everything we've built." Elena smiled coldly. "How unfortunate." That night, Engineer Okafor worked frantically to download everything she could from the data systems. The quantum encryption had taken her hours to crack, not because it was advanced, but because it was based on obsolete human protocols that had been layered with 80,000 years of patches and modifications. "I've got everything," she whispered. "Design specifications, historical records, communication logs. The evidence is overwhelming. Every single piece of technology they claim came from mythical Makers is actually human engineering." Dr. Rivera had been compiling his own evidence. "And I've found records they don't want anyone to see. references to the human problem in early Dominion documents, plans to manage the transition narrative. They knew exactly who the makers were, and they decided to erase us. Captain Chen was monitoring security frequencies. They're getting suspicious. I'm picking up chatter about anomalous behavior from the Terran delegation. We need to move fast. Elena made her decision. Then we don't hide anymore. It's time to show this galaxy what real makers look like. The next morning, Elena's team walked into the council chambers not as supplicants seeking membership, but as humanity reclaiming its birthright. The three council leaders, representatives of the Vorth, Kektari, and Nexari, sat on a raised platform that was designed using human architectural principles they had never understood. Council members, Elena said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber, we need to talk about the Jasm, of course, replied the Vorth representative, a massive creature with crystalline growths along its arms. We are always pleased to discuss the gifts of wisdom we have inherited. Elena smiled. Good, because I am Dr. Elena Vasquez of the Human Colonial Expansion Project, and 100,000 years ago, my people built everything you claim was given to you by gods. The silence that followed was so complete that Elena could hear the quantum processors humming in the walls. Then Administrator Velthara laughed nervously. That's impossible. Humans are extinct. The archaeological record clearly shows. Shows exactly what you wanted it to show, Dr. Rivera interrupted, stepping forward with a data pad. Every piece of evidence you've displayed has been taken out of context, relabeled, and presented to support your narrative. But I've seen the real records in your own archives. You know perfectly well what happened to humanity. Engineer Okafor activated a holographic projector. The air filled with technical schematics, mathematical proofs, and engineering diagrams. Every piece of technology your civilization uses is based on human designs. The quantum encryption protocols in your data cores are modified versions of systems I personally helped design. The warp drive specifications are identical to drives built in Earth's shipyards. Even the translation device you're using right now operates on linguistic principles developed by human researchers. The council members were staring at the evidence, their expressions shifting from confusion to understanding to something approaching terror. This proves nothing, the Kektari representative said desperately. Convergent evolution could explain. Captain Chen stepped forward, and his voice cut through the chamber like a blade. Convergent evolution doesn't explain identical mathematical constants, identical engineering tolerances, and identical software architecture. You didn't inherit this technology from gods. You stole it from humans. Elena raised her voice so it carried to the observation GA. Lares, where diplomatic representatives from dozens of species were watching. For 80,000 years, the Dominion has ruled this galaxy by claiming divine inheritance of human technology. They've built their authority on a lie, charged tribute for innovations they never created, and erased an entire species from history to maintain their power. The chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives began shouting questions, demanding explanations. The Dominion Council members were arguing among themselves in urgent whispers. But Elena wasn't finished. She had spent weeks studying galactic politics, and she knew exactly where to strike. The proof is in your own systems, she announced. Every species here has scientists and engineers who understand technology. Run the analysis yourselves. Compare the mathematical signatures. Trace the evolutionary development of the systems you use. You'll find that everything traces back to a single source, humanity. Administrator Velthara stood desperately. Even if this were true, it changes nothing. The humans are gone, extinct for millennia. The Dominion has faithfully maintained their legacy. Elena's smile was sharp as starlight. Are we gone? She gestured to her team. We're standing right here. We survived your attempts to erase us, and we've come back to reclaim what was stolen. 4 individuals cannot challenge the authority of an entire galactic government, the Nexari Council leader declared. You're right, Elena agreed. 4 individuals can't, but the truth can. She activated a final hologram, this one showing a star map of the galaxy. Hundreds of worlds lit up in blue. While we were gathering evidence here, our allies were busy. the Zephyrians, the Korathi, the Free Worlds Alliance, and 47 other species that have been oppressed by Dominion tribute demands. They all have copies of the evidence now. They all know the truth about the Makers. While we were gathering evidence here, our allies were busy. The Zephyrians, the Korathi, the Free Worlds Alliance, and 47 other species that have been oppressed by Dominion tribute demands. They all have copies of the evidence now. They all know the truth about the Makers. The galaxy would never be the same. Over the following months, as the evidence spread and was verified by independent scientists across thousands of worlds, the Dominion's authority crumbled. Some species demanded immediate independence. Others called for reparations. A few even asked humanity to take direct leadership roles in their governments. Elena refused them all. "We didn't come back to rule anyone," she told the Emergency Galactic Assembly that formed in the wake of the revelations. "We came back to take our place as equals in the community we helped create." The new galaxy that emerged was messier, more chaotic, but infinitely more honest than the one ruled by the Dominion's lies. Trade networks reorganized around mutual benefit rather than tribute. Research projects became truly collaborative, and at the center of it all, humanity found its voice again. Not as gods or rulers, but as the clever, adaptable, stubborn species that had always found a way to survive and thrive, no matter what the universe threw at them. Elena stood on the observation deck of the new human embassy, watching ships from 100 worlds dock at the orbital station. Each one carried beings whose ancestors had used human technology for millennia, finally meeting the species that had made it possible. "No regrets?" Captain Chen asked, joining her at the viewport. Elena smiled, feeling the satisfaction of a job well done. "None. We came back to reclaim our legacy, and we did. The galaxy knows who we are now. And what we're capable of," Dr. Rivera added, approaching with Engineer Okafor. "When they tried to erase us from history, they forgot the most important thing about humanity." "Which is?" Elena asked. Okafor grinned. "We don't stay erased. We adapt, we survive, and we come back stronger than ever." Outside the viewport, the stars burned with the same light that had called humanity to them so long ago. But now, instead of conquest or domination, they represented something better. A galaxy where every species had a voice, where innovation flourished through cooperation, and where the ancient dream of unity through diversity was finally becoming reality. The Makers had returned, not as mythical beings of cosmic wisdom, but as exactly what they had always been: humans who refused to give up, who faced impossible odds with clever solutions and stubborn determination, and who believed that the future was always worth fighting for. The galaxy was finally ready to meet them,